we need to treat it with a little more of an honorary sort of, respectful appreciation approach
Or
because
as it should be, right? Because
correct.
if nothing is sold, there is no such thing as an economy, and if there's no economy, there is no society. Like,
Correct.
this gentleman's got an understanding of organizational and human development, and he couples that with his corporate experience to design and tailor products and programs that transform your careers and personal lives of thousands of his clients as well. He's the founder of Witz, Better Human Program, and the host of the Better Human podcast. In your mind, why is it important for anyone, whether they're in sales or not, to learn the art and science of persuasion and influence?
There's always a natural persuasion. If you've got kids, you know how important persuasion is and influence, right? Because without that, it's a push and pull sort of relationship. I think what persuasion and influence really allows us to do is get people emotionally invested. And one of the most difficult things that we have in life is people. And it's the one thing we don't learn.
Tell us about what you mean when you talk about the ego states a lot, I noticed.
I'm going to take a very complicated concept and I'm going to draw it down to 2 minutes. So we have 6 sides to our personality.
All right, Jeremy Miner, welcome to another episode of Closers or Losers. Now, today we have a very special guest. A lot of times, a couple of times a month, I bring in a guest who has some type of expertise in like communication or sales or body language or tonality or influence, which all helps you sell more. Okay, so whatever you sell, B2C, B2B, door-to-door, business to government, does not matter. You're going to want to tune in today's episode. Now, I'm going to introduce this guy. He's an entrepreneur. He's a thought leader. He owns a training and development company. He's an author. He's a mentor. He's a dad as well. And this guy blends psychology, which I love. My background's human behavior and human psychology, social dynamics in college. But he blends that human behavior, that psychology, with how to communicate from, street smarts, him out there doing the thing, and from startups to the White House, which we're going to find out what that means, the White House. He's learned how to bring entrepreneurs and business leaders to the top of their game. You remember, we always talk about there are levels to this ball game called sales, persuasion, and influence. You simply decide which level you want to play on, right? That's going to require different skills to be able to play on a higher level. So this gentleman's got an understanding of organizational and human development, and he couples that with his corporate experience to design and tailor products and programs that transform your careers and personal lives of thousands of his clients as well. He's the founder of Witz, Better Human Program, and the host of the Better Human podcast. Greg Witz, how are you, my man?
I'm well, Jeremy. What a great intro, man. I got to take you everywhere. That's a proper introduction.
Hey, there you go. I've been on some podcasts where they, send them the bio and they're just like, they start going and they're just like, Jeremy Miner, he's a sales trainer. He owns this company called Seventh Level. Jeremy, welcome to the show. And I'm like, thanks for the lovely intro. I'm so grateful, Then I got to build up my credibility a little bit. It's interesting. So, Greg,
Right.
let's jump right in here. So, everybody watching us on YouTube or listening somewhere on, iTunes or Spotify or wherever they're listening to us, pretty much everybody is in some form of sales, persuasion, influence. They're either a salesperson selling something, they're a coach, they're a consultant, they might be an entrepreneur, they might be, vice president of sales of a company or a sales manager, sales leadership. Doesn't really matter. I want to first start off with you. Why did you start a training and development company, and whom did you really start it for?
Interesting question. I actually fell into this industry. So I was not going down this road. 30 years ago, I needed a summer job. I ended up at Witz, which was my father's company. He started it, and very brilliant guy.
Yeah.
No longer around with us, passed around 2012. But I got into it, and my first job was sales. Grinding those leads and bringing them in and pitching them on the programs and closing them, and high pressured sales.
Yeah.
I think there was more pressure to from the management of the company, which is if you did not sell, boy, was there a lashing that you got.
So they taught you to be high pressure. They thought that was going to work, or what?
I think the whole environment back then was a little more high pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure to close, and the scripting and the sales approach was a little heavy. I
Yeah.
must admit, I didn't love it. It was always this sort of awkward, sort of icky feeling.
Yeah.
And today, obviously, things have evolved, and we understand that,
Yeah.
strong arming someone into a
Well, it's
sale
just
isn't
human
going to work.
behavior 101. Nobody likes to be strong arm or feel like they're
Correct.
forced to make a decision. And we have to learn as salespeople how to get them to pull us in and
Correct.
facilitate and help reframe their way of thinking to solve their problems and get where they want. Keep going.
Exactly.
Good.
Exactly. And I think what you talk a lot about is, problem finding, right? Which is
Yeah.
how do we sort of get in there and then provide the solution. And, for many years, actually, I kind of kicked against sales. I had this sort of position of we don't sell, right? We've got this great program, this great company. We're just going to do the work. And if we build it, they will come. And
Yeah.
I think that took us so far, but you start to realize that, sales is one of the most important functions of the company, and we need to treat it with a little more of
Mm.
an honorary sort of, respectful appreciation approach
Well,
because
as it should be, right? Because if
correct,
nothing is sold, there is no such thing as an economy, and if there's no economy, there is no society. Like
correct, correct.
salespeople in general have a lower status. They're viewed at a lower status by the general public simply because of the way we've been taught how to sell and communicate that triggers that. Whereas salespeople should be viewed at a much higher status because if nothing's sold, like we said, there's no economy, there's no society. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and we might even sort of reframe that into one of our major responsibilities is to help the person buy,
Yeah.
as long as you got the right solution in the product. So, yeah, so that's how I started. And like I was 23, 24, and I was the highest performing salesperson out of the entire group. And like I'm some kid, right? Like what I
Yeah.
know,
What's
but
going on? Yeah.
the delivery, the connection, the ability to manage interactions and communication and
Yeah.
draw things out of people, I was natural and I was good. And yes, there was training that sat behind that.
Yeah.
So that was how I launched my career. And then along the way, facilitation popped in and needed to facilitate and got really good at that. And, fast forward today.
How did you get
Uh,
good at facilitating? Because it's a different ball game. Like,
yeah,
we have sales people like clients of ours that, they go out and they crush it now. But if they tried to train you what they were doing, they wouldn't be able to do it. They're not good
yeah.
at like facilitating and helping a person pick it up and actually understand what
And
they're
learn. Yeah. Look, I don't want to say I was natural at it. There was obviously a lot of training and presentation skills, but I think what allowed me to succeed at that was sort of breaking the rule a little bit of what that
doing.
presenter was and just coming in the room and being authentic. Greg, this is me. Let's chat.
Yeah.
Let's try to help you understand these concepts. And that's been some of the things that we've done at the company, which is we're not here to preach what I think I know or my team knows. We're
Yeah.
here to take very proven concepts and models and frameworks and help you understand how you could use them to
Yeah.
be more effective within your role, whether that be sales or leadership or, anything
Yeah,
along
you're
those
not
lines.
selling training and leadership development. You're selling the results of what the leadership development does for them, which helps build better culture, which typically keeps their employees from leaving to other places. So it prevents attrition,
100.
helps them grow the company and scale and make more
Yeah.
revenue money, right? So it's a big
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And one of the most difficult things that we have in life is people. And it's the one thing we don't learn, right? We don't learn how to be married. We
Mm.
don't learn how to deal with people. We don't learn how to be leaders. I think there's training programs out there, but what happens is we sort of fudge our way along and we start to figure it out. And we go, you know what? This kind of worked. I took that approach or I did that or I behaved this way. I'm going to double down on it. But when we turn to the world of psychology,
Yeah.
there's a lot of tools and frameworks and concepts that can actually help us
Yeah.
understand and learn people and
Yeah.
personalities and interactions
Let's,
and the
let's talk about
dynamics of a relationship.
let's talk about that. This is an important subject. Why, in your mind, why is it important for anyone, whether they're in sales or not, to
Mhm.
learn the art and science of persuasion and influence? Like, why is it so important for people, whether they're in sales or not, to actually learn that?
Yeah, because I think in today's world, it's without that, you're unheard, and it's hard for us to express and communicate effectively.
Mhm.
Um, there's always a natural persuasion. If you've got kids, anyone in the audience, if you got kids, you know how important persuasion is and influence, right? Because without that, it's a push and pull sort of relationship. So, in a lot of cases, the success of dealing with people comes down to alignment. Are we aligned? Are we sitting on the same table? Are we shoulder to shoulder?
Yeah.
Or are we in this oppositional side? So a
Yeah.
lot of it is getting people to a place where they're open enough to just receive and hear what you have to communicate or express or talk or pitch or sell or lead,
Yeah.
or, and it could even just be an idea, right?
Yeah.
I think this is, we think about sales in a traditional way, which is there's a product or a service, but we're selling every single day. We're selling
Yeah.
ideas, we're selling concepts, we're convincing, we're negotiating. It's you cannot not do that when it comes down to community and people in business.
Yeah, even if you're not in sales, we call that non-sales selling. You're still, you might not be paid a commission to make a sale, but you're still out trying to persuade, influence every day. Like if you're, if you're a business owner and you're trying to get your team to catch your vision of where you want to take your company, what are you
Hmm.
doing? You're trying to
Yeah,
persuade, influence, you're trying to move others. If you're an employee, trying to
right.
convince the boss to give you a pay raise, you're trying to persuade, influence, move others. If you're
Yeah,
an attorney, trying to convince the judge your client's innocent, you're trying to persuade, influence. I mean, it's in everything we do. Like every
yeah.
day you're trying to persuade and influence somebody or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I have a real scenario. I just onboarded our new head of growth. Awesome dude, like, amazing. Started recently and doing really well. But I remember the conversation, like there was a lot of, in quotations, persuasion
Yeah.
on come and join me. Like this is where we're going. This is what we're achieving. This is what the work we're focusing on. This is what our purpose is. And without that, the simple, here's the job, here's the description, here's the salary, it's not enough, right? You want to get people, I think what persuasion and influence really allows us to do is get people emotionally invested. They get emotionally bought in, right? And when I'm emotionally bought in, when I'm connected with you on that level, then the rest is gravy. The rest is easy.
100%. Let's talk about, I want to dive deep into your background. Like it's not every day that you have somebody that understands human behavior, human psychology, especially, well, just it's very rare actually. So
Right.
give us a little bit of like, how did you learn how to work with human behavior? Like, how did you learn how to do that? And why is that so important in the world of communication?
Yeah, so I went to did a background in human behavior and adult education, and did some of that traditional learning. But I think what I was really schooled and taught by, I've had a tremendous amount of mentors, psychologists, and thought leaders, and really really impactful, intelligent people that have taken me under the wing and groomed and taught me along the way. And you know, it's it's landed where we are today. My ex-partner used to call me a street smart psychologist, which I used to
Okay.
be very insulted at. I was like, what the fuck, bro? Like, come on. And he was a clinical psychologist. And I said to him one day, I said, like, what do you mean by that? Is this an
Yeah.
insult? And he said, listen, Greg, I got to tell you, I'm a little resentful of you. And I said, why? He was like, you've read the same books, you've done the same study. I went to school for 7, 8 years for it, and you just did it without going to school.
Yeah.
So I'm not a psychologist, but it's the world that we live in. And what this brings us is self-awareness. I think without self-awareness, nothing can change. If we want to improve in sales, if we want to improve in business, entrepreneurship, leadership, it all begins with you and recognizing what sort of buttons or knobs I need to turn to myself in order to grow and mature and to become more effective. Because what worked today might not work tomorrow, and what worked with you, Jeremy, might not work with the other person. So I have to, in an authentic way, not chameleon, but I have to be able to adjust my communication,
Yeah.
right? It's the same in tonality. It's the same in sort of interactions, when to slow down, when to speed up, like presenting and facilitating, right? You got to be able to read that room. And without being able to read the room and the audience and being able to adjust it, and you'll know this, you can take shitty content and put an amazing facilitator in the room, and
Yeah.
they're going to kill it. And those people are going to move.
Yeah.
You could take amazing content, put a bad facilitator in the room, and
They're not
we
going to
don't we don't have that same sort of
kind of
impact
go
and
in
outcome.
one ear out the other. Tell us about what you mean when you talk about the ego states a lot. I've
Mhm.
noticed. What does that actually mean, and why is it so important for everyone watching or listening to understand what that is?
So ego states are the different sections of your personality. And the guy that came up with this, his name was Dr. Eric Burns. He actually published his book in 1953. And I'm going to take a very complicated
Sure.
concept and I'm going to draw it down to 2 minutes.
Make it easy for all of us to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have 6 sides to our personality. And these 6 sides to our personality are a combination of learned behavior, right?
Okay.
So I watch my role models and people around me act and behave in a certain way, and I pick that up.
Yeah.
Primitive emotion, which is what I have to learn how to manage later on in life,
Okay.
and something called the intelligent side, or the thoughtful side, or the thinking side. And
Okay.
we've named them. And the names that we've created for these sides of your personality are to give us an instant understanding of what that side of that personality does or what the behavior is. So the first side of our personality we call the critical parent. This is our
Okay.
dominant, direct side to our personality. In fact, with salespeople, when we see strong critical parent profiles, we
Yeah.
can start to see that they are drivers in
Mm.
larger deals and larger results, right? Because they're pushing for something. The opposite to that is something called the nurturing parent. And the
Okay.
nurturing parent is our relationship management side.
Yeah.
Now, in what the name parent isn't to describe that you have children, it's to describe behavior, right?
Sure.
So when I look at my relationship managers, my account managers, my customer service teams, right? One of the things that we look for in those profiles are strong nurturing parent profiles because
Right.
they have a natural ability to connect with people and to be patient and kind and
They have more
compassionate
empathy.
and more empathy, right? And it's funny because, sometimes clients will come to me and they'll be like, hey, we have a problem with person X. And what does person
Mm.
X do? They're a relationship manager. Okay, great. Let's look at their profile. I see the problem here. They're a
Mm.
massive critical parent personality. They're a low nurturing parent personality. You've got them mismatched within the role.
Yeah.
So part of what allows people to be successful in their actual roles is learning and working and practicing, but we are natural in certain areas, right? Now, the opposite to this is called the child profile. And this is the emotional side to your personality. And there's three states to it. There's something called the spontaneous child. This is the most natural side to your personality, the playful side.
Okay.
In fact, facilitators and salespeople, we look for strong spontaneous childs.
Okay.
This is the gift of the gab, the adaptability, the shaking hands, the kissing babies, the creativity,
Quick
the
wittiness, right?
wittiness. Exactly. Right now, the problem with spontaneous childs is if they're too high, they're too impulsive.
Yeah.
They fail in sales because they can't stay consistent. They can't do the hard stuff,
Too
right?
emotional.
Correct.
Yeah.
The withdrawn child is the next stage of personality. And this
Mm.
is the shy, introverted side of your personality. And in fact, when we as salespeople are interacting with our prospects or leads, the worst type of personality to deal with, the most difficult to close, to sell, to persuade, to influence,
Yeah.
is the withdrawn child
Really? Why is that?
because they give you nothing. They say nothing. They're
Yeah.
avoidant. They're
Yeah.
quiet. They're introverted, right? So
Mm.
we're trying to draw stuff out of them, and they're resistant, and it feels like they're resistant.
They're harder to open up emotionally.
Correct. And it's a survival mechanism for them. So
Mm.
what we were talking about before, we're
Mhm.
too pressured in our approach. That's going to draw out that withdrawn child.
Makes a lot of
Doesn't
sense.
matter what we're coming up with. And finally, we have our angry child ego state. This is the
Yeah.
temper, the aggression. And
Yeah.
believe it or not, entrepreneurs and really successful sales folks
Yeah.
have strong angry child sides to their personality. This
Okay.
gritty, resilience, aggressive, competitive, right? If you think about it, you get rejected all day in sales. It's not an
Sure.
intelligent thing that you're now calling the
Well,
next
you get a
person.
higher skill level, you get rejected far less, but I agree.
Correct, correct. But the it's like the professional athlete. What allows them to dig deep in the middle of the game when they're tired and they're beat up and they're fatigued? It is
Yeah.
not the intelligent side of their personality or brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's that angry child.
Mm.
However, for sales managers and leaders and entrepreneurs, they're nightmares to manage.
Now, would you say that some people can be a mixture of a couple of those? Like some might
Correct.
be a little bit half angry child, but also half, spontaneous side. Like there's a
Correct.
okay. Tell
Correct. So we're not all linear in one way. We're not one of these things. We're all of these sides to our personality. And depending on our upbringing, our background, our
Mm,
experience, our role models, have determined how we've developed to these sides.
that makes
And in
sense.
some cases, when we've improperly developed and grown and matured,
Yeah.
our child ego states, that emotional side to your personality, is out of whack,
Mm,
right? So it's disruptive to your success in
that makes sense.
relationships or in your professional life.
Yeah.
Now, the one that anchors us in the middle is called the adult, right?
Okay. Yeah.
The intelligent side, the rational side, the
Yeah.
organized side, right? Think about engineers, scientists, researchers, analytical individuals. This side of our personality has a lot to do with our frontal lobe, our
Okay.
ability to operate with intention, decision making, to process information, to think, right? To think about the emotion. And in a lot of cases, the joke we make about our personalities is we sacrifice life's most important decisions to the child.
Yeah.
We get married through the child, we get divorced through the child,
Mm,
right? I take the job through the child, I quit the job through the child,
yeah.
right? And what we're trying to get from a place of self-awareness is what I like to call getting the adult to drive the bus. We are
Mm,
all these ego states, but it is this adult side of your personality that needs to be able to pick and choose which ego state, which side of your personality is going to be effective for that interaction or for that relationship.
sure.
And we teach a rule called PRAT, P-R-A-T. And
Okay.
if you want to manage your relationships professionally and personally more effectively, this is the only rule you need to live by. People respond as treated. The
Okay.
ego state that I speak to is the ego state that responds. So
Mm,
one of the baselines, and back to problem finding and persuading and influencing, the best ego state that we want to deal with is
mm,
the adult. So
mm.
how I now communicate to you will
Okay.
either help you come up to that adult,
Mm,
that intelligent, mature, logical side to your personality,
mm.
or will keep you into child.
Interesting. Keep you
Mm,
closed off and withdrawn a little bit, I guess. So,
correct.
so I want to go. This it's very fascinating. Yes, I remember taking a course on this. I think I don't know if they were the same names. I think it was my junior or senior year, but
Yeah, if you did
that's
that background, you would have probably crossed this concept at some
oh for
point.
sure.
It's also known as transactional analysis,
Yeah,
also known as the PAC model, PAC.
yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, 100%. I love this stuff. I'm a sponge on this stuff. Okay, so you said in your bio it says from the White House to startups. We all
right.
want to know what do you mean by the White House? You working with the White House? What's going on?
Yeah. So I was and still kind of do a little bit of work with them to this day, but from 2000 and it was 11, I think, maybe
Okay,
12,
okay.
have worked with the White House as an executive coach and leadership trainer.
And who
So
did you work with, like at the White House?
So everyone up until the actual Obamas and they're known as VVVIPs,
Okay.
VVIPs and VIPs. That's the sort of
Wow.
the
What
actual
did you
president and first
like,
lady. And
what did you do with them? Like, what were you training them? What were some of their gaps maybe they had and some problems you were solving for?
interesting, great question. So what is interesting about the White House is there's an entire business that runs behind the White House,
Yeah,
right? There's a marketing department, there's an HR department,
yeah,
finance department,
sure.
and it's a group of about 800 people. So like any business, they have a culture. And one of the issues that they were having was what was known as civility,
Okay.
internal customer service. And the whole exercise behind this was, if we can't treat each other right, how
Yeah.
are we going to end up treating the public, or how are we going to be outward facing?
How
So
are we
we
going to
begin
be perceived by the public? Yeah.
correct. So we started with the leadership, right?
Okay.
And worked our way all the way down basically to
Yeah.
facilities
Okay.
and taught things like internal customer service, communication skills, leadership skills, all based on the work we do, which is enhancing and developing your interpersonal skills, your
Mm,
communication skills, your emotional intelligence, your assertiveness, your confidence.
yeah.
And it began with the concept of self-awareness. Who am
Okay.
I? Who are you? And
Yeah.
how do I now need to communicate more effectively in order
Interesting.
to manage this interaction? And one of the things that I say to my clients a lot is your life got really hard by sitting in the seat, because
Mm,
at the end of today or the end of the program, you're no longer going to be able to get away with, I don't know why that happened, or I just wasn't me, or they're just, you know what?
you're
You're
going to
going to
know
go,
what's going
oh, that was me. I was the one that created that transaction. And, people get to this place where they're like, damn, I wish I didn't do this, because now I have to hold that responsibility. I have to live to that
Now I know
expectation.
what's going on. Yeah, 100%.
Correct.
What do you feel? That's quite fascinating. It makes sense. The White House is a business basically behind the scenes
Mhm.
in any administration, right? They're the one running the show. The president's kind
Right.
of the face, of the whole show and everything. So what do you feel like are some of the main challenges that companies have uh trying to create culture, especially that a lot of companies, like we have, I don't know, I think we have around 160 employees, but we only have maybe 35% of them in offices. The rest are virtual right now. We're
Right.
bringing a lot more in, but it's a different challenge to build that culture when some people are virtual, some people are in the office. Like, what are some of the challenges that you see companies going through in this kind of new world?
Yeah, so you just nailed it, right? This whole hybrid world is not effective when it comes down to culture. You cannot build connection through a screen. You cannot, the other line to this is sometimes these digital walls are thicker than the concrete walls, right? So we're trying to connect with people, and we are a herd mentality. We are built to live in a village, and without being in the village together, it's very hard to instill. Now, here's what's interesting. What is culture, right? Culture is a set of attitude and behavior. We can measure it. This isn't this sort of mystical thing, which is
Yeah.
The culture feels great around being here, right? It's attitude, so mindset, how people are showing up with that energy. Are they pessimistic, optimistic? Are they difficult? Are they willing and open? And
Yeah.
then behavior. How do
Mhm.
they act and behave and communicate?
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we can actually develop.
Mm.
We can develop and teach behavior. We can actually change the way we behave
Mhm.
with beginning with the concept of self-awareness. Um, and it is only with that we can now start to affect culture. And back to culture, culture requires this. It requires the back and forth, the bumping in the hallway, being like, Jared, can I borrow you for a second? And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
fine, what is it? And then we sit down and I'm like, what do you think about this idea? And you're like, you know what? I like that. Let's add this. And before you know it, what we've done is we've created this amazing sort of solution or come up with amazing ideas. But that time together, that bond, that man, I really enjoyed that
Mm.
conversation. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
You can't get that without that. So,
How do you
you
help
know,
how do you help companies that are virtual? Like what can you do? Let's say if they are virtual to try to do your best to solve this issue.
get them in the office. Right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Stop negotiating with people around this stuff.
How are
Look,
you
I
helping companies do that? Like talk with
right.
them about working from the office and actually wanting to work from the office rather
Yeah.
than just work out of their
Yeah.
bedroom or something.
Yeah, I find it's different depending on the country we're in or the state that we're in. Like Canada versus U.S. or depending on the state that you're in the U.S.
Mhm.
You'll find that there's certain states or places that people do go in the office, and it's
Yeah.
great. Now, the next thing is how do we encourage people to come together? I think the back to the ego states that we were describing.
Uh,
I think the major problem that we have in the world today is a withdrawn child problem. People
mm,
are too comfortable staying at home, withdrawing, isolating, avoiding conflict and conversations and decisions.
mhm.
And we are accepting it. And without coaching and helping people come
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
it's gonna get worse, right?
Yeah.
Now there's advantage to being hybrid. I mean, I moved to Costa Rica. I'm sitting in Costa Rica now, doing this
Yeah.
podcast with you,
Yeah.
right? I'm able to run my company here. I'm
Yeah.
still traveling a lot back and forth. So
Yeah.
there's room for the hybrid, but I think there's got to be a mandate that when it comes down to us as a group and a community,
Yeah.
we got to create time together.
Mm,
So the way we help people, the way I help people, is beginning with communication.
yeah.
How do you go have that conversation?
Yeah.
How do you persuade and influence and encourage and get someone bought into the concept of the value of coming in and working together?
Yeah.
And then if we're sort of cross borders and we're sort of cross states and stuff like that, then the question comes down to as an organization, what are we doing to bring teams together throughout the year?
Mm,
Because that
mm,
also works. I'm not suggesting you need to grind people in an office from 8 to 5 every single
sure.
day, Monday to Friday, hour
Sure.
and a half traffic back and forth. There's
Yeah.
got to be some flexibility. And I think one of the things that the pandemic does or did was it contributed to business evolving.
Yeah.
Interesting. White House. So I used to show up there in a suit, a tie, white shoe, like you were put together.
Yeah. You got to
I was
be
there.
look
I
good.
was I was there in November, and I was going to do a gig, and I reached out. I said, "By the way, what is the dress code?" And they were like, "Oh no, jeans, t-shirt, casual, business casual." And I'm like, "Wow, that's interesting, right?"
You could
But that's
change.
a good thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's the
I
same
don't.
thing. When I go to a keynote or speaking engagement, I always ask the host, like, what is everybody else wearing in the office or
Mhm,
wearing in the stage or wearing out in the audience, right? So if I'm teaching let's say a company that's in, B2B sales and they're all dressed up to the knee,
mhm,
I've got to dress up kind of, or I got to look
mhm.
halfway decent. I might be
You have to
training
match your audience for
yeah,
sure.
to match the audience. If I'm training now, I'm not going to go wear jeans or anything. That's just me. But I might, just wear like a polo short sleeve shirt with 7th Level logo on it and a pair of like,
Mhm.
like kind of almost like golf pants, if it's
Yeah.
more business casual. So you just kind of got to dress to
Mhm.
what your audience
Well,
is.
I've seen your look, man. I want to ask if you're sponsored by Hugo Boss, or if that's just the polo that's the preferred polo that you wear
We
that you
had
they
not.
end up.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm surprised Hugo Boss has not reached out to us. I'm a little bit upset, Hugo Boss, if you're hearing this podcast. Not reached out to. So sometimes I wear these Nike shirts, but I have some Nike Polo 7th Level, but
Yeah.
mainly Hugo Boss. Viboard, you got a Viboard I saw. That's where
Yeah, I got one over here too. I know they're sponsoring you, aren't they?
Yeah, we got
Yeah,
to deal with Vibe boards. They'll probably start seeing me do some commercials for them soon. So
yeah,
yeah, we'll
yeah.
see, man. Yeah, I'm
Yeah. Well, listen, bud, you've got a good whiteboard or Vibeboard
we have a
rhythm. Like
we have
I watch you use it. Like
yeah,
I love the
yeah,
way
great.
you
We got
interact with it.
your training, some of your trainings on there, and maybe a year from now, you're like, I think I did a training that a year ago, and you go back to it and you can kind of change it around, and then bam, you just saved all this time. If anybody is still using a whiteboard, like we're living in like the dark ages because
Yeah.
like right out of training, then you got to race it, like, oh,
Yeah.
gross, yikes.
I remember our training rooms were filled with the Egan whiteboards, like
Yeah,
the whiteboard rail, the
yeah.
hanging whiteboards, and facilitators. There was a mandate that they had to clean the whiteboards at the end of the day.
Oh my gosh.
And it was always an interesting exercise getting facilitators to clean those boards because you delivered for 7 8 hours and you're like, go clean your boards, right, for to
Wipe
get
off
the room ready
everything.
for the next day, right? And there was this resistance, and then to your point, some people would be like, well, wait a minute, no, I want to keep that there because we need to reference back to it, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yikes.
are living in a new world. I think this is a brilliant product. So by the way, Vibe boards, way to go, you know.
The Vibe board's a good one. I saw you got one there. Now, so as we kind of wrap up, how are you? Where can they go to learn more about you? Like if they've got teams that they want to develop, like, so if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, and whether you have 2 or 3 employees, or maybe you got 100 and 510,000,
Yeah.
where would they go to learn about what you guys do to maybe see if they've got some gaps in their culture? Because, what you're solving is a lot of it is you're solving like working with better cultures. You're solving like top people leaving for other companies. You're solving attrition. Like how much money
Yeah.
do companies pay in lost attrition every single quarter by they lose some of their top people or even just, people down below, but then they have to hire new people, they have to train those people, it's just a lot
Hmm.
of work that you
It's
actually solve.
and the corporate experience and knowledge that they leave, right? And that industry knowledge. So, if people are interested in learning a little more about me and the company's called Witz Education. So
Yeah.
WITZ
Yeah.
education.com, and there you can see everything. We got all the different programs and the offers, and information about us as a team
Yeah.
and the work that we do.
Yeah.
And on social, Greg Witz, you're gonna find me everywhere. you
Okay.
know
So let's
um
get your Instagram. Do you want to have them follow you on Instagram? Is that where you want them to follow you
Yeah,
at?
Instagram, LinkedIn, if it's more of a corporate audience,
LinkedIn,
LinkedIn, we're good.
Instagram.
But yeah, at Greg Witz, GregWitz. And you'll
Okay.
see me pop up with a Making Humans Better Humans hat and logo and my face behind a purple thing. So, and of course, you were on my podcast recently. It's called the Better Human Podcast and did really well, and appreciate you coming and dropping all
Yeah,
those bombs and the knowledge.
we had a really good time, man. We'll have to do it again. We're building out a new podcast studio. It takes forever around here because you got to get it
Yeah.
zoned, and then they have to tear down the walls, and then you got to get approved by the city. And I'm just like, geez, like, am I living in California? I thought this was Arizona because
I was
this
going to say, aren't you in Arizona? Isn't it a little
thinking
more
like,
loose and
no, it's
cool and
taking.
relaxed there?
It's probably, well, I love California. Like, look, I'd move our corporate headquarters to California if it wasn't for the two terrible T's, taxes and traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
California has the best weather by far. But
Yeah.
man, the zoning and restrictions around here just, we're like 4 months in, they haven't even started yet. We're still trying to get everything zoned and approved. Yikes.
Well, it'll happen soon enough. Stay positive, stay focused. You'll get that.
We'll get you out here in person. We'll bring you up to from Costa Rica. All
I
right,
love to.
everybody, make sure you follow Greg. Go to his website. If you've got a team and you want to get better at building better culture, so you scale your business and you stop losing, people to your competitors, which probably costs you a little bit of money for sure, probably a lot. Make sure you go visit, follow him on Instagram, follow him on LinkedIn. Greg, thanks so much for having us on. We're a wrap till our next episode. And you want to learn how to sell more, always go to salesrevolution.pro, salesrevolution.pro. And you can always follow me on Instagram at Jeremy Lee Miner, Miner, my verified account. Greg, enjoy Costa Rica. Always a
Thank you,
pleasure.
brother. Always a pleasure.
Take care.